Hey, everybody, it's Rick Wilson. Welcome back to the strategy session. I'm joined tonight by Joe Trippi. Stuart Stevens is on the road today, and by my friend and Lincoln Project co-founder, Mike Madrid, who is one of the smartest guys in politics. And he's going to help us break down so much of the madness that we've got going on right now. Gentlemen, I want to start with you both here. Guys, you are both observers of the decline of American small d democratic institutions. Let's start with you, Mike. What was your takeaway today on that insane speech that Trump and Hegseth delivered to 800 generals and admirals?
Well, there's two things I think that jumped out at me. First was the good news is there was a much more tepid response than I think he was anticipating.
Oh, yeah.
That is something we do need to pay attention to. These are professional soldiers. They would call themselves soldiers more than warriors, despite what the kind of MAGA characterization is. They take the oath very seriously, at least the vast majority of them do. And I think there's going to be a lot of conversations, consternation, and reflection amongst these leaders of our military about what this moment was and what it meant. But the bad news is this is a commander-in-chief who has, basically said that the primary threats to the United States is the United States, that it is domestic enemies, meaning political opposition, that is going to be a main part of where he's focusing his energies. And he's began that process in Los Angeles. We're moving tanks into Portland, Chicago, DC. I mean, this is preparing people, both the military and American citizens, for what is likely to be a dramatic escalation in the militarization of our society and the crackdown on whoever it is the regime deems an enemy to the state.
He told us today, the enemy within. Joe?
Yeah, I think basically listening to both of them just say a bunch of crazy stuff that would make any sane person puke. And then immediately say, and by the way, if you don't like that, you should do the honorable thing and resign. Right. Which is, clearly what they're trying to do. I agree with Mike that this is preparing military leadership for that moment when he orders them to put troops into the streets. And if you're not going to be there to do that, resign, do the honorable thing and resign now. I do agree with Mike too, and this is the key. These people, all of them professionals, took an oath to the Constitution, not to break the law for Donald Trump or to end the Constitution for him. And you got to hope that all of them stay and defend the Constitution and don't take up their request to honorably resign. There's no such thing. It's to stay there and defend us.
I texted with a retired 4-star general today, and I said, "Would you turn the key for this guy?" And he goes, "I'm glad I'm not in that position, but he is obviously mentally disturbed, and I would not." He goes, "And I know a lot of the guys in that room today that I'm still close to would not." And I hope that he's right, and I hope that as Mike pointed out, that very tepid response today was a sign. You could see Hegseth's heart was breaking when they weren't on their feet clapping, and Trump wasn't too happy about it either. But I mean, I think Trump's speech was the more troubling of the two. Hegseth was just sort of juvenile garbage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But Trump, the whole thing was still the usual sir stories, all of his enemies. He had brought up Biden over and over again. But this clearly was, it showed that story that was in the paper over the weekend saying, oh, well, Trump was asking questions if what he really saw in Portland was real. He seemed to think it was pretty real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mike,
there's no question this was real. You don't put the President of the United States on that kind of a platform unless you absolutely are convinced it's real.
Right.
And there are some, and again, this is a really tenuous time. I'm not going to suggest it's not, but that does give me hope that there are people in that room, and you've clearly had some of those conversations with people who are close to it, who would suggest that at least for the moment there is a strong core group of professional soldiers who realize not just that they're not with this regime, but more importantly, that their oath to the Constitution holds, and that means something. And there's a difference between those two. It means that they will defend the Constitution and are loyal to the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And they know exactly what that means. That's a very positive, bright spot in this moment. There is one other thing that we should always keep mindful of as they keep toppling down and knocking down leaderships in these institutions, whether they're universities or law firms or media companies. And that is one of the defining characteristics of successful authoritarian movements is they usually have overwhelming support amongst the populace when it happens. Not always, but usually. Donald Trump is at historic lows. The Republican Party is not doing well right now. And that public opposition is manifesting itself throughout the country right now. So when you have this type of lack of popular support for where the regime is heading, this need to overplay their hand and be kind of, if not tepidly, called out for it amongst the leading generals. These are most of the generals in the world were in this room.
Yep.
That's another issue, but that those are signs to be looking for, that the propaganda machine saying that we're strong and we're moving, we're on the march, is not sitting with a lot of people, a lot of Americans, the way most of us are unsettled by it at the same time.
I do want to give our audience a little bit of an uplift here. So, guys, let's dive in for 1 minute on just how unbelievably crappy Trump's polls are right now. I mean, Joe, you and I have been talking about this a lot. His numbers on the economy, on inflation, on prices, on jobs, and on immigration are absolutely a train wreck. Let's start with the economic stuff, and then Mike, you're an expert on the immigration question. I want to dive into that, but Joe, on the economic stuff, we're not seeing any turnaround in Trump's numbers on the key job creation and economic optimism numbers at all.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's across the board. It's whether it's inflation, prices, the economy in general, jobs. It is, every one of them is way underwater. And with independents, this is the key is when you see independents on some of these are literally, they're not in the 30s. It's 23% approval, 26% approval. And, even when he's doing 39, it's because, the Republicans are still up there at 80 or 76, but independents, Democrats were always gone. I mean, 90 something percent unfavorable, right. But it's the independents have literally in the past month started to really, really say hell no. And it's clear in those numbers.
And Trump picked up meaningful numbers in the 2024 election of Hispanic votes overall, but Hispanic men and African-American men, not a majority, but a statistical increase that was meaningful, and of young white men dramatically. Mike, he's losing all those pickups he made in the 24 election, and the Republican candidates below the ballot on him are doing even worse with those groups, right?
Shortest honeymoon in political history. Yeah, look, he screwed the pooch on this just a few months into this, and I want to be really clear for the minds of listeners and people who are trying to make sense of this one or the other. Trump's numbers with Latinos started to drop on what he called Liberation Day. They started collapsing with the announcement of tariffs. This was 8 weeks before the ICE raids, so the ICE raids are having an impact. But they're cementing an already low number, a low range. He's essentially lost every Latino pickup that he got since the 2016 election, and he happened to do it within about 60, 70 days, not even 100 days in. So, look, there's a lot of reasons to not like what's going on. There's a lot of reasons to have this backlash coming from Latinos away from Donald Trump after this big, huge swing. But let's be mindful of something. It happened for economic reasons. The immigration stuff is just cementing on top of that, and that's important because there's nobody alive who thinks the economy is going to get better in the coming months. Yeah. The consumer confidence numbers are 50-year lows. The tariff impacts are just beginning to hit right now. Recession bells are still going off, and people overwhelmingly, for good reason, are blaming Trump and the Trump economy, and there's no reason to not see those support levels go. You saw 43% support approval rating for Donald Trump in the New York Times Siena poll. His rolling average is now hitting 38, 39. Yeah. Guys, we were seeing that with the Lincoln Project was seeing that in 2020 at the bottom of COVID. Like that average is not different than that same low point. And I would expect the one difference is the economy, like I said, people are blaming the economy overwhelmingly on Donald Trump. And as it gets worse, I think you're going to expect to see weakening numbers even below a 38% average level.
And it is below 38 with independents. That's what's it's only the steadfast of the MAGA base that's so high up there that's keeping it in the 30s. It is clearly the independents are moving away, and that's the one thing I still think that the Democrats haven't understood. They have to stop, in my view, thinking like a party and start to think as leading a true pro-democracy opposition movement.
Right.
Urge people who are against this. Actually, on the shutdown, if it's going to be a shutdown, get the American people to come out and stand and protest that what Trump does in light of once he starts firing federal workers, all that. Galvanize and build a movement to get people. The more we get visible, and the more the generals are going to get have more solidarity with us, the people. Even the courts, even some of these Republicans in Congress will have to become more afraid of us than they are of him and his threats. And I think that the only way to do that is to mobilize people, and for us to be more visible in the wake of all this, particularly when the American people already have such a low opinion and low approval.
I think that's right, Joe. And I think that to loop back to what Mike was talking about in the beginning, the public is not with this authoritarian move, and it's not with this economic disaster of the tariffs. And I think you saw that in the first iteration of the No Kings things and some of this public mobilizing on the ICE front. So I think in part it is because even Trump's diehards, and I had a great conversation the other day with a former member of Congress, a former conservative Democrat, but he was saying to me, all my MAGA ag friends, all my agriculture friends who are MAGA as hell, they're so angry with him. They don't want to say his name. They don't want to take his name in vain, as he put it. They're so angry. They're so heartbroken. They know they're going to lose their properties. They're going to lose their farms. It's a disaster in every way. And part of this is Trump always gave people that idea that somehow his magical negotiating skill would make America, so prosperous. And it's just not working out. It's just a broken thing. I think the other thing he's kind of broken is American culture. And Mike, you wrote a phenomenal piece about the Ryder Cup. Talk to us about that, because it was something we were in that, we were shocked about it over the weekend. Like, it's so tasteless. But talk to us about the piece.
Well, look, I think anybody who watched and saw some of the fan behavior at the Ryder Cup, I guess maybe most people should have been shocked by it, disappointed in the American fan base. But the Ryder Cup is a little bit different. This was not like hooligans at a fan game or Raiders fans, doing what Raiders fans do at a football game. This is a competition between, what used to be Britain and the United States, and now it's expanded to be Europe and the United States. This is a friendly, competitive game. Golf has always been sort of one of those more refined sports. You don't see people, doing what you saw at this event. This came on the heels, and you can't isolate it and say this was just a bunch of golf, guys who were day drinking and went on too long with backward baseball hats and salmon cargo shorts. Like this was people throwing beers at Rory McIlroy's wife. This was event organizers chanting, four-letter words at the Europeans. But you can't, like I said, you also can't separate this moment, this ugly American moment, from the speech at the UN just a couple of days before, where we were just completely embarrassing ourselves on the national stage, and somehow, ironically, take a pride in that. Like, that's patriotism when the rest of the world looks disdainfully on this P.T. Barnum spectacle that we've allowed ourselves to not just become, but recognize has always been in there. Again, to harken back to Stuart Stevens, like, how much did you really believe in this if you're able to fold so quickly? How much of this has always been part of American culture that Trump is actually just revealing and reveling in a frat boy sort of way, when we know that dignity and civilization requires a lifting of it. And so I felt I needed to kind of write about these two events because they happened within hours of one another, and they're a sign that our reflection of our leaders are a reflection of us, and we've got to, admitting the problem is the first step in recovery, and I'm not sure America's admitted it that we've yet, and that means we probably haven't hit rock bottom.
And it is a perfect example of politics is downstream from culture.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's a great piece, and I hope people will check it out. It really hits the mark.
Well, I think the next big topic that's going to hit us, folks, is internationally. What we're seeing now is people saying, well, you've got masked police on your street. You're arresting American citizens in your immigration push, as well as people who are immigrants. Big New York Times piece this weekend about the uptick in how ICE is now, they can't hit all their targets. So they're grabbing anybody that gets in their way. They're grabbing anybody off the street who meets a profile. And internationally, that is starting to have a burden on this country's image and our soft power across the world. Because who are we now to go to lecture China on authoritarian tactics in the streets? Who are we to go and lecture Turkey or other countries now on the same thing?
Or the people who don't want to come here because if they do, they're not sure they're not going to be picked up, no due process, and shipped off to a gulag in El Salvador.
Right. Or 100 Iranian Christians getting deported back to Iran.
Yeah, crazy.
And think about what we've done just to erode confidence in our elections. I mean, Jimmy Carter used to go around the world to be an election observer.
Yeah.
Like we need other international observers to come watch our elections now.
Yeah.
And who are we to be lecturing, as you correctly pointed out, Rick, like China on human rights violations? We've got a secret police that we're about to triple in size, responsive only to the executive here.
Right.
A military that's larger than the United States Marine Corps in a few years as the buildup continues. Like, this is not a healthy democracy. This is no longer that shining city on a hill. We're not an example that people are aspiring to. We're a warning sign that people are saying, if it can happen there, it can happen absolutely anywhere.
Right.
No, and also the reality on elections is they'll be monitored. There'll be ICE monitors who'll be there to basically under the guise of looking for illegals or whatever, and it will be to drive the election result and scare people away from the polls. And this is, I think, today the generals, the speeches, that's what I think they're leading to. I mean, they're just sort of trying to prepare the ground with military leadership that this is where we're going, folks, and get on board, or we can do it the easy way or the hard way. As I can't believe, but that's even Netanyahu's picked that one up. So it's just a crazy time. But people have to be aware of the threat, and I think they've got to become more visible in reacting to it and being louder. And I think Democratic Party writ large has to be a lot louder and visibly calling on the American people to join them in standing up to this.
So guys, I want to move on to the next topic here that's sort of consuming the news today, and that's the shutdown. I want to touch on that for a minute because the Democrats are of many minds on this. I wrote a big piece that got some exposure today, basically saying, go in if you're Hakeem and Schumer and say you got to undo the tariffs. You got to stop criming in the White House and making money, and you got to release the Epstein files. I know none of those are things Trump will do, but the Democrats, my theory of the case was they needed to show some fight and to push him into a corner. But unfortunately, we have Chuck Schumer leading the charge here. So, guys, let's talk it through. How are they doing, and what is your predictions on the shutdown?
I don't know about a prediction other than I thought it was tepid. I thought I think it should be calling on the American people to stand up with us against exactly the things that you talked about, Rick, all of it. And this is the time. You didn't see any of that. I think healthcare, it's important, but it's like, number 14 or something in the Siena poll. I mean, protecting democracy, the threat to democracy, is like one of the top things with Democrats and independents. And then you have all the other things that you mentioned, Epstein, et cetera, et cetera. Predicting this, what we know is that Donald Trump and they're going to use it to dismantle more departments and fire everybody and all those things. But I think the fire back on that is they're doing it anyway. They would do this. This is just their excuse to do it. And that's why I think as they do that, that's the time when the party has to turn into a pro-democracy movement and urge the American people to give their voice against this and to start rallying to the cause of democracy and saving this country before those ICE monitors are standing in front of ballot boxes and taking, it'll be I've worked overseas in a lot of places where, quote, it's a democracy.
Saddam had elections every 2 years.
Doesn't
he got 104% one time.
Yeah.
Putin's still getting pretty good numbers too. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, go ahead.
Well, look, I was going to say, I know the three of us have had many conversations over the years. I always approach politics by saying, if you're not commanding the battlefield, if you're not choosing the high ground from a tactical perspective, don't engage in the fight. So what you articulated is exactly right, Rick. That's what it is. It's like, give us the things that we know the public wants overwhelmingly, and we'll fight on that ground. If not, don't drag yourself down to what Joe just accurately pointed out. If you're going to get into a situation where you're defending, healthcare for undocumented people, like I morally, that's not that's a different consideration than the fight that you're in. You're not going to win that. And if the Democrats can't win this fight, my God, there's some bigger questions that need to be asked. So I'm of the opinion that if first to take your strategic and tactical approach, that's exactly right. Force them to say, no, we're not going to give up the Epstein files. Force them to say, no, we're going to hold on to these tariffs, which are wildly unpopular.
Right.
But if you're not going to do that, then just, give them the damn votes and move on to stronger ground where you're going to win. Don't bleed yourself out politically on a fight that you can't win on ground that you're not popular on, even though it's part of your moral construct. It's the stakes are too high here. And I'm worried about the Democratic Party losing a government shutdown, which is the Republicans' fault.
Right. They control the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, and the White House.
How's it possible you could be blamed for this, but it seems like they're lining up to do that? I'm with you on the tactics of this.
I really think that's so smart, Mike. It's just like, why would you accept their terms of engagement? You're going into a duel where you're a good sword fighter, but they bring a gun.
That's right.
And so, yeah,
I think they're being pulled into doing it. I mean, the pollsters out there are telling us healthcare. That's been the place to go. It's just not. That's not the fight we're in. We will have to fight for healthcare, but
I made a point to somebody today
that are better places to fight these guys on and win.
I made a point to a Democratic leader today, and I said, and they were like, "Oh, well, if ACA goes down, it hurts a lot of people." I'm like, you realize most of the people on ACA, the majority, are in red states, and they are MAGA voters.
Yeah,
they are MAGA voters.
Yeah,
so they should get pain. They should feel it, and because they're not going to say, "Oh, wow, this is Trump's been promising to cut the ACA for years, and he's had the Democrats bail him out repeatedly on it." And so, it's like the farmers. They are the ones, have the day you voted for is cruel but real when it comes to the tariffs. And I also thought the Democrats should go after the tariffs with him because
the $20 billion that we gave that we bailed out Argentina.
The corruption stuff. I think the corruption thing is also, and that's a longer conversation, but the corruption stuff in this administration.
One of you guys has to explain to me why there hasn't been an ad on Republican tax increases in this whole damn thing.
Mike,
this is
you know what? You are absolutely fucking.
Just run a damn.
That's on me. That's on me.
Unbelievable.
That's on me. But it is true. I mean, the tariffs have been a $400 billion tax.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is Trump wants the Democrats to help him fund a $50 billion bailout for the farmers. And that's why I kept thinking, like, Jeffries and Schumer should walk out and go, we tried to kill the tariffs to save the economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brand those tariffs as as an economic poison pill. Brand and yes, Mike, brand the Republican tax increases that are embedded in the big bad bill and everywhere else, but instead they're going to do a 24-hour live stream. That's the equivalent of going on Twitch and writing a sternly worded letter.
I know. Guys, quit calling it a tariff. Call it a tax.
It's a tax.
It's the Republican tax increases.
It's a tax hike.
People understand that. People are seeing it every day. And it's like, there's a million different distractions, all of them legitimate. There's Epstein, there's corruption, there's legal stuff going on, there's free speech issues. These are all true. But the polling is telling us, for low information voters, that
they're hurting.
They're hurting.
Right.
And it's the Republicans that are hurting them. So quit selling them democracy.
Yeah, we're shutting it down.
Some of what they're telling you is hurting them because the Republicans are hurting them. Talk to them where they're at. They're increasing taxes. They're making housing more expensive. They're making food more expensive. They're making energy more expensive. They're shutting down the economy. Nobody blames the Democrats at this point. But if somehow they allow the Republicans to snatch, victory from the jaws of defeat on this,
you have to have the American people on your side, and you have to fight for shutting the tariffs down to save the economy. I mean, it's those kinds of things that you're talking about are everybody out there would be supporting that instead of.
And it's such 101 stuff. This is not complicated for the Democrats, but I think they've overcomplicated it. And they're chasing too much of the bait right now. There's a lot of bait out there.
There's too much bait, right? But then look, it doesn't take the one piece of bait they're not taking is the biggest best piece.
Right. Right. Here's the economic harm Trump is doing to you in your face every day.
I'm not suggesting like you don't talk about the other pieces. Of course you do, but definitely talk about the one that people are saying we are most concerned about. Like that one too.
And Democrats are always they have those like sort of academic navel gazing things. Joe, you and I've talked about this. It's like, how do we get the working class to think we care about them again? Oh, I don't know. Maybe talk about the shit that's affecting their lives right this minute. Right this minute. Hey, your gas prices are really high and winter's coming. Sorry, guys, but here's why that's happening. We'll fix it.
And the great irony of it all is the polling is telling they're telling people what they want. It's not like you've got to go search for a policy.
No, they're screaming about it.
Yeah, it's right there.
Do you think they're playing a longer game? The only explanation I have is that they believe that next year when all these health people get kicked off healthcare and their healthcare goes way up, even in the red states, because that's who this is going to happen to. That's when they win that fight. In other words, it's the only reasoning that makes any sense. It doesn't make sense to me, but I see your argument, and it's logically correct. It's not my argument. It's
I know. You know what I'm saying? It's just like do I believe that about Chuck Schumer? I do not.
I'm of the opinion that long term in this environment is tomorrow. Like you can't be
exactly.
2026, 2028. It's like it's tomorrow. Like that's long term. Short term is right now. What are we driving right now in terms of narrative?
Yeah, and it is definitely not going to work with a sternly worded letter or tweets, about healthcare from Hakeem. It's just that they need, that being seen to fight will rally people to them.
Truly. Yeah.
Being seen to fight.
Add your voice to the chorus and it keeps getting louder. It makes it easier for the next person to step up. I mean, I thought it was just Susan Collins who had this deeply troubled, strategy of trying to get out of stuff. It's pervasive. There has to be more voices getting louder, including all of us, right? I mean, we're all engaged in this and we'll keep doing that. But listeners going like, I don't know what else to do. Just keep amplifying voices. If nothing else, keep that message going because it makes it easier for those that are considering to come over or trying to get off the sidelines, get engaged. They're seeing you, they're seeing your energy, and that does matter. It does have an impact. Exactly.
Well, guys, we are running up on time here as always. So Mike Madrid's Substack is outstanding. The Great Transformation
Thank you.
on Substack.
Yep.
He is one of the smartest analysts in politics. You should always pay attention to Mike. He's really got his pulse on where this electorate is evolving, and it is evolving rapidly. Joe Trippi, that Trippi show, watch it. It is outstanding. Listen to it. It is outstanding. You'll get some very smart insight there. We've got so much other stuff coming up on Lincoln Square that I'd encourage you to tune into. Maya May with Cliff Cash coming up this week. She's also got a new show with Mike Fanone, which is excellent. You can catch me so many damn times on so many things I can't even address it all. You can catch me streaming on Thursday nights on The Breakdown, Fridays on Behind the Numbers with Andrew Wilson, Mondays with Molly Jong Fast on Fast Politics, the Lincoln Project podcast, and a cast of thousands. All right, folks, appreciate you tuning in. Keep the faith and keep pressuring your friends and your family to pay attention and get involved. There is no other solution out there that is going to come. It's not going to magically appear. We've got to all drag this thing into the light, and we got to fight this battle till it's over. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next Tuesday. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Joe.
Good to see you.
Thanks all. Thanks, Mike.